Sir, please start for them.
Am I audible clearly?
Yeah.
Okay. So I am Professor Prakash Kumar Chaudhary. Today I will be talking on lens and cataract, and this is my sub-specialty. So I will try my level best to make it easy and simple. And first, let us see what is lens. We have two eyes. আমাদের দুটো চোখ আছে. In two eyes, we have two lenses. And this is, as you can see, this is the lens. And the positions of this lens is behind the pupil and the iris and in front of the vitreous. So the position of the lens is behind this is the pupil and iris and in front of the vitreous. So this is the lens. And this is a transparent and biconvex. As you can see over here, this is a biconvex in nature. So the position of the lens is behind the pupil and the iris and in front of the vitreous in a suspended position with the help of suspensory ligament. These are called suspensory ligament, and it is a transparent and biconvex structures. So now come to what are the structure of the lens. The structure of the lens are lens capsules, lens epithelium, lens nucleus, lens cortex, and suspensory ligaments. So as you can see over here, it's a lens capsule. Sorry. The lens capsule is a thin transparent membrane. It is a thin transparent membrane, elastic membrane that encloses the lens substance. And what are the lens substance? Nucleus, lens nucleus. You see, this is the central hard core of the nucleus, it is nucleus, and the peripheral part is the cortex. So this nucleus and this cortex, the peripheral part is the cortex and central part of the nucleus, these are called lens substance. So these lens substance, these are enclosed by thin basement elastic membrane. This is called capsule. Anteriorly it is called anterior capsules. You can see over here, this is anterior capsules, and the equatorial part, it is called equatorial capsules, and behind this is called posterior capsules. So capsule anteriorly, this is the anterior capsules. In the equatorial region, it is called equatorial capsules, and behind it is called posterior capsules. So it is a thin, transparent, highly elastic membrane that encloses the lens substances. What are the lens substances? Lens nucleus. In the central part there is a nucleus. In the peripheral part it is called cortex. And another important thing is the lens capsule, its elasticity is decreased with the aging process. So lens is elastic in nature. When this elasticity is declined with the aging process, the power of accommodations will be declined. And what is the role of accommodations? The role of accommodation is to increase the refractive power, to see the near objects. So when this elasticity decreases with the aging process, automatically the accommodation also will be declined with the aging process. Once the accommodation will be declined, there will be near vision will be compromised. The patients cannot see at near, and that is called presbyopia. আমরা বাংলায় বলি কেউ 40 কেউ বলে 40 ধাক্কা. So one of the cause of presbyopia, it is due to decreased accommodation. Decreased accommodation is due to the decreased loss of elasticity of the lens capsule. So you have, this is the importance of the lens capsules. And next comes to the lens epithelium. There are these epithelium, lens epithelium is present behind the anterior capsule, as you can see over here, behind the anterior capsules and the equatorial capsules. This is the equatorial capsules. So behind the equatorial capsules and behind the anterior capsules, there are lens epithelium. But as you can see over here, in front of the posterior capsule, there is no lens epithelium. So these lens epithelium, they are present behind the equatorial capsules and behind the anterior capsules, but they are absent in front of the posterior capsule. Sometimes it is asked in the viva, why the lens epithelium, they are absent in front of the posterior capsules. Yeah. Because this lens epithelium, posterior lens epithelium was there, but this lens epithelium during embryonic life, there was epithelial cells in front of the posterior capsule. But these epithelium use, they become elongated, they lost their organelles and nucleus and converted into the primary lens fibers. These primary lens fibers, they form the embryonic nucleus that will ultimately occupy the central area of the lens of the in adult life. So in the adult, we get epithelium behind the anterior capsules and behind the equatorial capsules, but no epithelium in front of the posterior capsule. Because these epithelial cells in front of the posterior capsule during embryonic life, embryonic life, differentiated into the primary lens fibers. They differentiate into the primary lens fibers, and these primary lens fibers, they form the embryonic nucleus. So this is why there is no epithelial cells in front of the posterior capsules. And there are two types of epithelial cells. One is A cells, and these A cells are called central anterior epithelial cells. As you can see over here, these blacks, central epithelial cells, and in the equatorial part, they are called equatorial cells or E cells. So lens epithelial cells, they divide into two groups. One is central anterior epithelial cells and equatorial cells. So the A cells or anterior epithelial cells, they tends to remain in place. They don't have any migratory capacity. They do not migrate. And they are the responsible for anterior capsule and anterior polar cataract. As you can see over, this is a lens. This is a lens. In the center of the lens, as you can see, there is a opacity. The anterior capsular cataract or anterior polar cataract, usually the opacity that corresponds with the visual axis. So these are called anterior capsular, anterior polar. And the cause of this anterior capsular or anterior polar cataract is the fibrous metaplasia of the A cells. And another is anterior capsular fibrosis. You see, this is the case of pseudophakia. When the cataractous lens is replaced by artificial intraocular lens, is some part of the remaining anterior capsules, there is a whitening. As you can see over here, whitening. This is called anterior capsular fibrosis. And next come to the E cells. The E cells means the cells they present behind the equatorial capsule. They are called E cells. And these E cells have migratory capacity. They migrate along with the posterior capsules. তারা এভাবে আস্তে আস্তে পিছন দিকে মাইগ্রেট করে along with the posterior capsules, and they are responsible for formation of nucleus and epinucleus in the physiological process and posterior capsular opacification. What is posterior capsular opacification? We will discuss later on because it is a very important topic. As a short note you will get. Basically, after cataract operations, normally these posterior capsules we left behind, we keep it intact. And after operations, when these capsule again become opaque, again become opacified, that is called posterior capsule opacification. It is also called secondary cataract. Cataract means cataract developed after operation. It is called secondary cataract. So we have seen that the lens epithelial cells, they are present behind the anterior capsules and behind the equatorial capsules. And these lens epithelial cells again divide into two groups. One is A cells. These are called anterior epithelial cells, and they don't have any migratory capacity. They try to remain in place. They don't migrate. But the equatorial cells, they migrate along with the posterior capsules, and there is no epithelial cells in front of the posterior capsules. There was epithelial cells during embryonic life. These epithelial cells, they differentiated into primary lens fibers, and that make the embryonic nucleus during embryogenesis. Next come to the, so What are the structure of the lens? One is capsule, we had discussed. This capsule is a thin elastic basement membrane that encloses the lens substance. What are the lens substances? Nucleus in the central part and the peripheral part of the cortex. And next are capsules. And we have seen, sorry, lens is the epithelium, and we have seen the lens epithelium is present behind the anterior capsules and the equatorial capsules, but there is no lens epithelium in front of the posterior capsules. Next, come to the nucleus. What is nucleus? It is the central hard core of the nucleus. And these nucleus, there are different types of nucleus. Embryonic nucleus, that up to the 3 months after the development of the lens. Then fetal nucleus, 3 months of the fetal life up to the birth. Then infantile nucleus, birth to puberty. Then adult nucleus after puberty. So there are different types of nucleus, but the important thing is it is the central hard core of the nucleus. But this is not so important for us, but the important thing is you have to remember what is nucleus. It is the central hard core of the nucleus. And what is the cortex? You see the space between the capsule and the nucleus. Capsule and the nucleus, this is called cortex. So anteriorly it is called anterior cortex, behind it is called posterior cortex, in the equatorial region it is called equatorial cortex. And this cortex is formed by the new lens fibers, and this nucleus is formed by the old lens fibers. That's why your nucleus is hard in consistency and your cortex is soft in consistency. So this is cortex. And next, suspensory ligament. As I mentioned, the lens, the positions of the lens is behind the pupil and the iris and in front of the vitreous in a suspended positions with the help of this suspensory ligament. This is also called zonules. So these zonules are attached between the lens capsule and the non-pigmented epithelium of the ciliary body. They are made up of fine filaments. This is called fibrillin protein. So if there is any mutation in the fibrillin protein, then there is a defect in the suspensory ligament. If there is a loss of suspensory ligament or tear in the suspensory ligament, the lens will be displaced from its anatomical dispositions. If there is a partial disruption of the zonules, partial disruption of the suspensory ligament, the lens will be displaced partially. ওটাকে বলা হয় সাবলেক্সেশন। যদি লেন্সটা এই অ্যানাটমিক্যাল পজিশনে না থাকে, এটা যদি অ্যানাটমিক্যাল পজিশন থেকে সরে যায়, কেন সরে যাবে? If there is a defect in the suspensory ligament, if there is a partial disruption of the suspensory ligament, partially যদি হয়, then it is called subluxation. If there is a total disruption of the zonules, এই জোনিউসগুলো সবগুলো যদি ছিঁড়ে যায়, then this lens will drop. এটা এখানে পিছনে চলে আসবে। This lens will drop into the vitreous cavity. এটাকে বলা হয় dislocation. So one is subluxation. Subluxation means কি? Partial due to the dislocation of the lens from its anatomical position due to the partial disruption of the zonules. Or what is dislocation? There is a anatomical, when the lens is displaced from its anatomical position due to the complete or total disruption of the zonules or suspensory ligament. It is called dislocations. And in the Marfan syndromes, all of you know what is Marfan syndrome. There is a mutations in the fibrillin protein. That's why one of the features of Marfan syndromes, there is absence of or partial disruptions of the suspensory ligament, and that causes subluxations of the suspensory ligament lens. Subluxation that we will discuss later on. And now, as I mentioned, it is very important. There is one important disease that we will discuss later on, the lens transparency. Our lens is very clear and transparent. So how the lens maintain its transparency? Number one, avascularity of the lens. Lens is avascular. So what are the other avascular structures? Sometimes it is asked in the bio, or you may get a MCQ. One is lens, and behind the lens the vitreous, then cornea, and trabecular meshworks. These four structures of the eye are avascular. Again, cornea, lens, vitreous, and trabecular meshworks. and absence of organelles and nuclei in mature lens fibers. Normally, these lens fibers, they are called lens protein, and the how they form from the come to this slide again. They form from these lens fibers. They form from the equatorial lens epithelial cells. When these equatorial lens epithelium, normally they are cuboidal in nature. Their their height and breadth are equal. When they comes into the equatorial regions, they become elongated. ওরা লম্বা হয়ে যায়. After becoming elongated, they lost their nuclei, they lost their organelles. যখন nuclei এবং organelles রয়, then they convert it into the lens fiber. All lens epithelial cells. That's why all lens epithelial cells, they convert into the lens fibers. And lens is the only structures in our body which is continuously grow throughout the life. This is one of the anatomical peculiarity of the lens. The lens continuously grow throughout the life. Why? Because there is no shading of this lens epithelial cell. A lens epithelial shading hote pare na. Suppose in the conjunctiva you see there is a lens epithelial cell is there. In the cornea there is the epithelial cell is there. There is a continuous shading of this lens epithelial cell, and again there is a regeneration. But in case of lens, there is a no shading of the lens epithelial cell. All lens epithelial cell continuously grow into the lens fiber. When suppose these lens epithelial cells convert into lens fibers, then this lens epithelial will be replaced by this one. When this one converted into the lens fibers, then this lens epithelial cell will be replaced by this one. This is the way there is a continuous movement of lens epithelials into the equatorial regions, and equatorial lens epithelial cells, they convert it into the lens fibers. And the old lens fibers, they gradually concentrate into the nucleus. That's why when this is hard, and the new lens fibers, they remain in the peripheral part, and they are called cortex. So the source of lens fibers, these lens fibers is formed from the lens epithelial cells. That you have to remember. So come to this point, and when these lens epithelium become elongated, after elongation, they lost their organelles. There is no organelles. There is no ribosome, cytoplasm, or whatever organelles are mitochondria, and they also lost their nuclei also. And as a result, these lens fibers are transparent, and at the same time they have some pump mechanisms in the lens epithelium and in the fibers. I am repeatedly telling these lens fibers are called lens protein, and they form from the equatorial lens epithelial cells, and they have some pump mechanisms that regulates the electrolytes and water balance, so maintain the relative dehydrations. If this pump mechanism is non-functioning, when they cannot function, there will be accumulation of water within the lens fibers. When there is the accumulation of water within the lens fibers, the lens fiber becomes opaque, and that is called cataract. Opacity of the lens is called cataract. So what are the factors that are responsible for maintaining the transparency? One is avascularity of the lens, absence of organelles and nuclei in the mature lens fibers, and there are some pump mechanisms in the lens epithelium and the fibers that regulates electrolytes and water imbalance and maintaining the relative dehydration. Next, come to the some anatomical peculiarities. Lack of innervation. There is no blood vessels, no lymph vessels. And secondly, lens is continuously grow throughout the life, as I mentioned earlier. The lens is so with the aging process, the weight of the lens will be increases. With the age of the process, the anterior posterior diameter of the lens will be increases, because it is continuously grow throughout the life. As there is no shading of the lens epithelial cells, all lens epithelial cells, they are converted into the lens fibers, and gradually with the aging process, there are more and more lens fibers, and the old lens fibers, they accommodate in the central part of the lens, that is called nucleus, and the new lens fibers, they accommodate into the peripheral part of the lens, it is called cortex. And another important, this is very important, the lens is covered by lens capsule from the embryogenic life. So the lens substance, suppose the lens, what are the lens substance? The nucleus, the cortex, they remain unknown to the immune systems. So the lens capsule, lens is covered by the lens capsule before the embryonic life. So before the development of the immune systems, they develop. And that's why the lens protein remain unknown to the immune systems. শরীর জানে না, body immune system জানে না, they have some lens protein as a lens, they don't have any idea. So that's why it is called sequestrated protein. And now when there is any injury, if the lens proteins come out, so these lens protein will treat by the body immune system as a foreign particles, and they initiate inflammations. So this is the another important thing. The lens is covered by a lens capsule from the embryonic life. So the lens substance remain unknown to the body immune system. And that's why these lens protein are called, lens protein means lens fibers. They are called sequestrated protein. They remain unknown to the body immune system. Body immune system জানে না, these lens proteins are part of the body. এটা যে আমাদের শরীরের একটা অংশ, সেটা body immune system জানে না. That's why when they come out due to any accidental cause, body immune system treat them as a foreign particle. Oh my God, it is not my own body substance. It is a foreign particle. So they start inflammations. Now, what are the aging changes of the lens? With the lens, as I mentioned, lens is the only structure which is continuously grow throughout the life. So the weight of the lens will be increases, the anterior posterior diameter of the lens will be increases, and the hardness of the lens will be increases. And as I mentioned, it is a very important thing. The lens capsule elastic in nature. With the aging process, there is a decreased elasticity of the lens capsule. These two factors, hardness of the lens and decreased elasticity of the lens capsule, causes decreased loss of accommodation power. So what is the goal of accommodation? Increase the refractive power. So when the lens become hard, when there is a decreased elasticity of the lens capsule, there is a decreased accommodation. So lens cannot increase the refractive power. If the lens cannot increase the refractive power, there is a difficulty in near vision, and that is called presbyopia. It is a physiological condition. It is not pathological. The patients at the age of 40 or above 40, no one can see at near without glass. That is called presbyopia. Another is, with the aging process, there is a chemical modifications, increased pigmentation, and progressive degradation of the lens protein. And so lens gradually become more and more hard. That is called nuclear sclerosis or hardening of the nucleus. And there is some changes in the ionic composition. As I mentioned earlier, there is some pump within the lens fibers, within the epithelium. When this pump cannot function properly, so there will be ionic imbalance, and that ionic imbalance causes imbibations of the fluid. The fluid will goes into the lens fibers, and that is causes opacity of the lens. So progressive hardening of the lens, changes in the ionic compositions, and increased concentration of the insoluble protein, all these things will causes opacity of the lens, that is called cataract. So now come to cataract. So it is a cataract. What is cataract? Normally, what I said, that normally the lens is very clear and transparent. When this lens become opaque, then it is called cataract. And why it is important? Because it is important, that is it causes visual impairments. And most common cause of visual impairment in our subcontinent is the cataract. Roughly 60 to 70% of causes of visual impairment is due to cataract. So now you can imagine, if any disease, incidence of any disease more than 10%, it is called significant. And you can see over here, 60 to 70% of visual impairment is due to the lental opacity. So whatever disease other is there, they causes visual impairment only 10 to 20%. But most common cause of visual impairment in our country is the cataract. But fortunately, this blindness due to cataract is reversible. But everybody should know cataract, because everybody will develop with the aging process. There is every possibility. At the age of 60 years, there is a 60% possibility. At the age of 70 years, there is a 70% possibility. At the age of 80 years, there is 80% possibility to develop cataract. So all of you will develop cataract. Your parents, your grandfather, grandmother will develop cataract. So you may not be ophthalmologist, but you should know about cataract. Without knowing cataract, you cannot make you pass in the MBBS. This is very important. This is always remember. Without knowing cataract, you cannot make you pass, because you have to know it for your, so that you can keep some good suggestion for your family members. What is cataract? What are the advanced treatment of the cataract? What are the lens we are putting after removing the cataract? That you have to know, so that you may not be ophthalmologist, you may not be treated cataract, but at least you should know what is cataract. So visual impairment again depends on the density of the opacity. Suppose in this case you can see over here, so the pupil, here pupil is dilated, easily you can see behind the pupil is the lens, and this lens is white in color. So there is severe visual impairment. So density of the opacity, if there is more dense, there is more loss of visual impairments. If there is less, it is a less. And locations of the opacity. If the opacity is around the visual axis, you see light passes to the center of the cornea, center of the pupil, and center of the lens. Light passes. So any opacity that in the central part of the lens, so this central ray will be obstructed. So there will be more visual impairment. But you see, if suppose this is the pupillary area, there is nothing wrong in the pupillary area, or this is the central part of the cornea, there is nothing wrong in the central part of the cornea, and this is the central part of the lens. If the central part of the lens is clear, so there is no obstructions of the ray of light to pass inside the eye. So light easily can pass. So in that case, if there is any opacity in the peripheral part of the lens, suppose there is a peripheral part of the lens, there is opacity. If there is opacity in the peripheral part of the lens, so in that case, there will be no visual impairments, because there is no obstructions of the ray of light to pass inside the eye. But if there is any opacity that corresponds to the visual axis, so the central ray of light cannot pass inside the eye, and that will cause severe visual impairment. So visual impairment depends on the density of the opacity and locations of the opacity. If it is very dense, it is directly professional. If there is more dense, more visual impairment. And locations of opacity means, if it is centrally located, there will be more visual impairment. If opacity in the peripheral part, there will be less visual impairment. Now, what are the causes of cataract? Or what are the etiology of the cataract? Or you can say, for the types of cataract. It is written a question askte pare. What are the types of cataract? What are the causes of cataract? What are the etiology of the cataract? So you have to be careful the causes of cataract and causes of age-related cataract. There is a difference is there. So when we'll discuss later on, you will understand there is a difference in you have to carefully observe this cataract or age-related cataract. So what is the cause of cataract? Number one is congenital cataract. If any cataract presents at the time of birth, after birth, if the parents or any of doctors, they noticed there is a opacity in the pupil area become opaque, then you can see it is a congenital cataract. It is called congenital cataract. So if there is just a minute. So there is any opacity at birth, that is called congenital cataract. Any opacity, just 1 minute. So any opacity at birth, that is called congenital cataract. And the causes of the congenital cataract, they are hereditary. Most of the time they are autosomal dominants. And there is any intrauterine infections like rubella, toxoplasmosis, syphilis, whatever may be, that causes cataract at the time of birth. And there are some maternal drug ingestion, suppose corticosteroids, thalidomide. So congenital cataract means cataract at the time of birth. And next come to the developmental cataract. So both congenital cataract and developmental cataract, it is very difficult to differentiate. But practically, if it is present at the time of birth, it is called congenital cataract. it after birth, but before the phase we call it developmental cataract, but both are same actually. And this developmental cataract is due to the defect in the growth of the lens fibers during the embryogenesis. So at the time of birth, we call it congenital cataract. At the time of development, how we can say this is a congenital? Some morphological appearance. You see, all cataracts are not looking like same. সবগুলো cataract দেখতে একরকম না। ওই cataract দেখে আমরা বুঝতে পারি যে the looking at the opacity এক একটার এক এক ধরনের opacity. So looking at the opacity, we can say this is a congenital type cataract, this is a developmental, this is a age related. এটার জন্য কোনো ইনভেস্টিগেশন করতে হয় না। Just clinically we can say that by looking at the morphology মানে কি? The looking at the appearance. So by looking at the appearance, we can say this is a congenital cataract, this is a developmental cataract, and this is the age-related cataract. We will discuss later on age-related cataract. This is the most common cause of visual impairments, about 60 to 80%. So this will discuss details later on. And then traumatic cataract. Any trauma can causes opacity of the lens. So in the lens there is only one disease, that is called opacity of the lens. So that is called traumatic cataract. This is very important. Secondary cataract, it is also called complicated cataract. You can frequently ask in the Viva, what are the causes of complicated cataract? What are the cause of secondary cataract? And complicated cataract is occurs secondary to intraocular disease. You see the lens is, you see, as you can see over here, this lens is surrounded by some other structure. Suppose there is a iris is there, ciliary body is there, behind there is a vitreous is there, retina is there. So any inflammations, suppose in the any inflammation of the iris, it is called iridocyclitis. Any inflammation of ciliary body, it is called cyclitis. And when both iris and ciliary body is involved, it is called iridocyclitis. So if there is iridocyclitis, they will affect the lens. So lens will be opaque. So it is secondary to intraocular disease. Any disease of the, suppose vitritis, so that can affect the lens. So there will lens will be opaque. Any disease of the retina can causes affects the lens. So complicated cataract means cataract secondary to other intraocular disease. The other structure that surrounds the lens, they causes complicated cataract. So you have to remember some, as I mentioned, anterior uveitis, inflammation of the uveal tissue. Acute congestive glaucoma. Acute means acute. Congestive glaucoma means if there is a sudden severe rise of intraocular pressure. There is a normal intraocular pressure is there 10 to 21 millimeter, 20 millimeter mercury. If the intraocular pressure is more than 40 millimeter mercury, that causes subcapsular opacity. Then pathological myopia. Those who are using more than -6 diopter lens, যাদের চোখের পাওয়ার -6 এর চাইতে বেশি, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10, এদেরকে বলা হয় pathological myopia. So from them they can develop the opacity of the lens. Any disease of the vitreous, as I mentioned earlier, some disease of the retina. One is rod cone dystrophy. It is called retinitis pigmentosa. We'll discuss later on retinitis pigmentosa. Retinitis pigmentosa কি হয়? Rod and cone dystrophy. Rod is responsible for the night visions and cone is responsible for the day visions. Rod cone dystrophy মানে কি? They are genetically determined but manifest after birth. এই ডিজিজগুলোকে এদিকে বলা হয় dystrophy. Dystrophy মানে কি? এটা যে হবে এটা ডিসাইডেড ছিল, ইট ইজ এ ডিসাইডেড জিনিস, দে আর জেনেটিক্যালি ডিটারমাইন্ড বাট নট ম্যানিফেস্ট অ্যাট দ্য টাইম অফ বার্থ। ওরা জন্মের সময় এটা ম্যানিফেস্ট হয় কখন? আফটার ফার্স্ট ডিকেড, সেকেন্ড ডিকেড অথবা থার্ড ডিকেড গিয়ে ডিজিজটা ম্যানিফেস্ট হয়। সেই জন্য বলা হয় হোয়াট ইজ ডিস্ট্রফি? জেনেটিক্যালি ডিটারমাইন্ড বাট ম্যানিফেস্ট আফটার বার্থ। সো রড কোন ডিস্ট্রফি মানে কি? বোথ রড উইল বি ডিফেক্টিভ, কোন উইল বি ডিফেক্টিভ। ইনিশিয়ালি রড ইজ ডিফেক্টিভ, সেজন্য there is a impairment of the night, there is a night blindness. So this is retinitis pigmentosa. One of the most important cause of the night blindness we know, that is vitamin A deficiency. So if you ask for the causes of night blindness, one is vitamin A deficiency. Must number one. You cannot say retinitis pigmentosa. Ek number তোমাকে বলতে হবে vitamin A deficiency because it is more common. Then you have to say retinitis pigmentosa. Then long extending retinal detachment. What is detachment? That is separation of the neurosensory retina from the retinal pigment epithelium by subretinal fluid. So these are the things you have to remember. What are the cause of secondary cataract? Then cataract secondary to systemic disease like diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus there is a the true diabetic cataract, the snowflake in opacity, snowflake opacity. But another important thing is with the diabetes, the cataract, the onset of the cataract is early and progress rapidly. সেজন্য ডায়াবেটিসে বলা হয় ডায়াবেটিসের নাম্বার ওয়ান হচ্ছে ডায়াবেটিস থেকে ক্যাটারেক্ট হতে পারে ট্রু ডায়াবেটিক শুধুমাত্র ডায়াবেটিসের জন্য ক্যাটারেক্ট হচ্ছে আবার ডায়াবেটিস মে বি অ্যাসোসিয়েটেড উইথ দ্য এজ রিলেটেড ডিজিজ সেটাও হতে পারে but the true diabetic cataract, how we can say this is a snowflake opacity. And second thing, with the diabetes, the age related cataract, the onset is early and they progress rapidly. Another is some skin disease. Why skin disease? Because you see the lens is developed from the surface sectoderm and skin also developed from the surface sectoderm. So developmentally both are same. That's why some skin disease also affects the lens, so like scleroderma, atopic dermatitis, all these things. And myotonic dystrophy, this is called trismus cataract, as you can see over here. So these are the causes of cataract or etiology of the cataract. Or if you ask for the types of cataract, these are the types: congenital cataract, developmental cataract, age-related cataract, traumatic cataract, secondary or complicated cataract, cataracts, systemic cataract, or some drugs. Some drugs can cause, and the most common drug is the corticosteroids, because those who patients are asthmatic and for kidney transplant, after kidney transplant they are taking steroids. Any route, corticosteroids by any routes can cause cataract, but most commonly it is by systemic routes. So cortico is the most common cause, chlorpromazine. You can remember only one. Now come to the, as I mentioned, the most common cause of visual impairments is the cataract. Number one, most common cause of visual impairment is cataract. Among the cataract, as I mentioned, there are so many causes of cataract like congenital cataract, developmental cataract, age-related cataract, traumatic cataract, complicated cataract, cataract due to systemic disease, cataract due to drugs. So there are so many causes. Among the all causes, the age-related cataract is the most common cause of cataract. So most common cause of blindness is the cataract, and most common cause of cataract is the age-related cataract. Age-related cataract due to the aging process. Why? As I mentioned earlier, for the aging changes in the cataract, so you see, you can recapitulate again over here. You see there are some chemical modifications in the lens fibers, lens protein. There is increased pigmentation of the lens protein, lens fibers, and the lens protein, they become more and more hard with the aging process. That is called hardness of the nucleus or sclerosis of the nucleus. And there is some changes in the ionic compositions of the lens. So when there is a changes in the ionic composition of the lens, there is a hydrations of the lens fibers, and that hydrations of the lens fiber, normally these lens fibers are relatively dehydrated. As I mentioned earlier, you see the transparency of the lens is maintained. How? Because they are relatively dehydrated. But once it is hydrated due to the changes in the ionic composition, then the lens will be opaque. That is called. And another is, there are the two types of proteins. One is soluble proteins, one is insoluble protein. But with the aging process, the insoluble protein will more than the soluble protein, and that causes cataract. So these are the pathogenesis of the age-related cataract. So that you have to mention. And opacity develops due to the aging process. Why? That I mentioned. And this is the most common cause of cataract. And usually this is bilateral, but maybe asymmetrical, but bilateral. So now what are the symptoms of the cataract? The symptoms of the cataract is blurring of visions, glare, the poor visions at the bright light, and improved near visions. You see blurring of the visions. Why? Because when there is opacity of the lens. So lens is one of the important optical media. What are the other optical media? Cornea, anterior chamber, lens, and vitrus. So any opacity in the optical media, what will happen? The ray of light cannot pass inside the eye. চোখের ভিতরে light যেতে পারে না. And light, it is the prerequisite the formation of the image. লাইট যদি না ঢুকে, the image of the object will not be formed at the level of retina. If image of the retina will not be formed at the level of retina, there will be dimness of the vision, there will be visual impairment. সেজন্য দেখার জন্য পূর্বশপ থেকে আমরা how we can see an objects, প্রথমে to see an objects the first prerequisite is the light হতে হবে from the object, the light অন্ধকার আমরা কেউ দেখি না, এই জন্য the first period light. The second thing হচ্ছে second period light should be enters into the eye, and light ঢোকার জন্য কি দরকার, what are the prerequisites for entrance of the light into the eye? The optical media should be clear. What are the optical media? Your cornea, your anterior chamber, your lens and vitreous, 4 optical should be clear and transparent. এখানে যদি কোন একটা optical media become opaque, if any one of the optical media become opaque, the light cannot pass. Light যদি pass করতে না পারে, image of the object will not be formed. So this is the second prerequisite. Third prerequisite is key. There will be key. The light should be the convergence, the bending of the right leg, and that should be optimum so that they can meet at the level of retina. This is the third prerequisite. The fourth, the healthy retina. There will be retina should be healthy one. When all these 4 periods will be formed, then there will be inverted image will be formed, and this inverted image, they will passes through the optic nerve and visual pathway to the brain. Brain will receive 2 inverted images from 2 eyes. Then what brain will do? 2 inverted images will convert it to 1 and make it inverted upside down. তখন আমরা দেখি। সেজন্য if the lens is opaque, what will happen? The ray of light cannot pass into the eye. If the ray of light cannot pass into the eye, the image of the object will not be formed at the level of retina. So there will be blurring of visions. And second is glaring. Glare means ki there is a poor visions in the bright light. It is more difficult in the jara bole je ki amra gari chalate pari na ডাক্তার সাহেব, গাড়িতে যখন oncoming headlight e tara there is poor, they can't see anything. Blurring of vision. That is called, you see here no glare, there is a glare because there is a scattering of the light rays. When ray of light, there is a, when cataract is there, you see normally ray of light passes this way, but when there is a cataract, there is a scattering of the ray of light, and that causes glare. And second thing, sometimes with the some cataract, it is surprising the patients say their near vision is improved. That's why sometimes the patients become happy. Normally what we know, as I mentioned, at the age of 40 or above 40, no one can see at the near. It is physiological, but it is the normal. So the normal is, সেজন্য কি করতে হয়, we have to use a near glass. Why there is patients cannot see at the age of 40? Because there is a loss of accommodation. Why there is a loss of accommodation? Because the lens become very hard with the aging process. Again, another important thing, the elasticity of the lens capsule declines with the aging process. These 2 things is the main factors to decrease the accommodation power, to decrease the refractive power of the eye. When there is a refractive power of the eye decrease, the patients cannot see at the age of 40 or above 40. 40 at the age of 40 or above 40. এটাকে বলা হয় প্রেসবায়োপিয়া, কেবল 40। এটা হচ্ছে ফিজিক্যাল, এটা নরমাল। বাট যখন কোনো কিছু নরমাল ভায়োলেট দ্য নরমালস রুল or violate the God's rule, then এটা ভালো হলেও এটা খারাপ। But what happens with the aging process, when the lens become nucleus, আমাদের অনেক সময় এসে বলে নিউক্লিয়াস become hard হয়ে যায়, তখন কি হয়, তখন তার রিফ্লেকটিভ পাওয়ারটা বেড়ে যায়। রিফ্লেকটিভ পাওয়ার বেড়ে গেলে the image will be formed in front of the retina. Any image formed in front of the retina, এটাকে বলা হয় মায়োপিয়া। এখানে মায়োপিয়াটা কেন হচ্ছে? Due to the aging process, the lens become hard. So lens is the culprit. সেজন্য এটাকে বলা হয় lenticular myopia. আমরা জানি যে কোনো myopic patients, they can see at near, তারা কাছে ভালো দেখে। সেজন্য in this case you can see the patients can read newspaper without glass. যদি বা আপাত দৃষ্টিতে মনে হচ্ছে যে কি the patient is very happy, অনেক সময় আমাদের কাছে রোগীরা এসে বলে ডাক্তার সাহেব আমার বাবার বয়স 80 বছর, এখনো কাছে পেপার পড়তে পারে, আর আমার বয়স মাত্র 40 বছর, আমি কাছে কিছুই দেখি না। প্রবাবলি আমি ভেজাল খেতে খেতে আমার চোখ নষ্ট হয়ে গেছে, কিন্তু আমার বাবারা তো ফ্রেশ খাওয়া দাওয়া করছে, সেজন্য ওনাদের চোখ ভালো। আসলে পেশেন্ট হচ্ছে কি বাবা। সো অ্যাবভ 40 কেউ যদি কাছে না দেখে, চশমা দিয়ে যতদিন দেখবে, ইফ দ্য পেশেন্টস ক্যান সি উইথ দ্য গ্লাস, দ্যাট মিনস ইট ইজ নর্মাল। বাট ইফ দ্য পেশেন্টস ক্যানট সি উইথ দ্য গ্লাস দিয়ে যদি না দেখে, তাহলে বুঝতে হবে সামথিং ইজ রং। অথবা খালি চোখে যদি দেখে, দ্যাট ইজ অলসো রং। সো দ্যাট ইজ বাট দিস ইমপ্রুভ নিয়ার ভিশন উইল নট পারসিস্ট ফর লাইফ লং। এটা ফর সার্টেন পিরিয়ড, কিছুদিনের জন্য সে কাছে ভালো দেখে। সো ফর দ্য টাইম বিং দ্য পেশেন্টস উইল বি হ্যাপি ফর দিস ইমপ্রুভ নিয়ার ভিশনস, বাট in course of time this near vision also gone. Then now come to the morphological types of age-related cataract. So what is nuclear cataract? As I mentioned, you see in the central part of the nucleus there is a nucleus. If the nucleus is opaque, it is called nuclear cataract. If the cortex is opaque, it is called cortical cataract. What is cortex? A space between the capsule and the nucleus, it is called cortex. So anteriorly it is called anterior cortical cataract. Behind it is called posterior cortical cataract. In the equatorial region, it is called equatorial cataract, equatorial cortex. So opacity of the anterior cortex, it is called anterior cortical cataract. Opacity of the posterior cortex, it is called posterior cortical cataract. Opacity of the equatorial cortex, it is called equatorial cortical cataract. And capsular cataract means if the capsule become opaque, it is called capsular cataract. So morphological type, again, it is very important. Sometimes there are written question. What the morphological types of age-related cataract? And another question is staging of the age-related cataract, that we will discuss later on. Both are not same. So nuclear cataract, as I mentioned, opacity of the nucleus, that is called nucleus. You can see over here, they use nucleus, you see, it is normally should be clear and transparent. But you see, the nucleus is opaque here. And color is not same. So what is the pathogenesis? It is actually when the lens fibers is gradually more and more hard with the aging process, hardening of the lens fibers, lens protein, along with the pigmentations of the lens nucleus, that's causing nuclear cataract. And what are the symptoms of nuclear cataract? Blurring of distant vision. But as I mentioned earlier, near vision is improved. So near vision is improved. Not all types of cataract. There are different types of cataract. Suppose nuclear cataract I mentioned earlier. Cortical cataract, opacity of the nucleus, nucleus যদি opaque হয় এটা বলে nuclear cataract. Opacity of the cortex এটা বলা হয় cortical cataract. Opacity of the capsule এটা বলা হয় capsular cataract. সুতরাং যদি nuclear cataract হয়, only then the near vision will be improved. In other cataract the near vision will not be improved. যখন একটা পেশেন্ট এসে বলে ডাক্তার আমি দূরে দেখি না কিন্তু কাছে দেখি, আমি পরীক্ষা করার আগেই বুঝে যাই যে কি ওনার nuclear cataract হয়েছে. So when the nucleus become hard, as I mentioned earlier, its refractive index increase. Refractive index মানে কি? Refractive power টা বেড়ে যায়. Refractive power মানে কি? The bending capacity of the ray will be increased. Bending capacity মানে কি? When the ray of light incident upon the eye, they bend. They never passes parallelly. They never bend. Bend কাট দিয়ে হয়. This bending occurs with the help of cornea and with the help of lens. The major contribution comes from the cornea, but lens also contribute about 15 to 20 diopter. 15 to 20 diopter. So with the hardening of the lens, you see hardening, how we can assess the color of the lens. And that is how, suppose this is the grayish white, it is we consider as a grade 1, then yellowish white grade 2, yellowish brown grade 4, and if it is brown color, it is hard cataract. More hard, more effective power, more bending power. If there is more bending power, the ray of light will meet in front of the retina. Any meeting point in front of the retina, sorry, it is called myopia. যখন myopia হয়, that the vision will be improved. So image form in front of the retina, that is called myopia. And as I mentioned, and that will be improved near vision. And this, who is the culprit for this myopia? Your lens is the culprit. Your lens is the culprit for this myopia. That's why it is called lenticular myopia or myopic shift. Why it is called myopic shift? আগে তো normal ছিল, আগে তো emmetropia ছিল. When a patient shifted from emmetropia to the myopia, that's why it is also called myopic shift. Then next come to the cortical cataract. What is the cortical? Opacity of the cortex is called cortical cataract. As I mentioned, there is a cortex key, a space between the capsule and lens. So there is anterior cortical cataract, posterior cortical cataract, equatorial cortical cataract. And the pathogenesis of the cortical cataract is there is an ionic composition of the lens cortex. If there is some changes in the ionic composition, what will happen? Subsequently, there is a imbibations of the fluid, and that causes hydrations of the cortical lens fibers. Normally, these lens fibers are relatively dehydrated. Relatively, আমি বলছি relatively. Relative মানে কি? এমনি যদি একদম hydrated হয়ে যায় তাহলে কাঠের মতো শুকায় যাবে। But we want relative dehydration. But if it is very hydrated, যখন এখানে পানি চলে আসবে, তখন the lens fiber automatically will be, lens fiber is very sensitive, they will get opaque. And so cortical cataract appears as a wedge-shaped ring or radial spoke-like opacity. The radial spoke-like opacity. This is called cortical cataract. So by looking at the appearance, by looking at the morphology, we can see. And the cortical cataract, the most common symptoms of the glare. এই ধরনের cortical cataract আসলে তারা বলবে যে ডাক্তার সাহেব গাড়ি চালাতে পারে না। They are very difficulty in the bright light, অথবা ঘরে যখন আলোর দিকে তাকাবে আলোর চারিপাশে একটা বড় বড় বাতি দেখা যাবে। And the visual impairment again depends on the locations of the opacity. Location means ki ami je bolchilam, if suppose you can see in this figure the central part is clear, so there will be less visual impairment, the opacity in the peripheral part. But if the opacity gradually extends from the periphery to the center, বাইরে থেকে যখন আস্তে আস্তে সেন্টারে চলে আসবে, when the ray of light cannot passes through the central part of the lens, then there will be severe visual impairment. So visual impairment will depend on the locations of the opacity. If it is peripheral, less visual impairment. If it is central, there will be more visual impairment. Next, come to the capsular cataract. Opacity of the capsule is called capsule. Very simple. Opacity of the capsule, capsular cataract. Opacity of the cortex, cortical cataract. Opacity of the nucleus is nuclear cataract. And the pathogenesis is, there are two types of lens epithelial cells I mentioned earlier. One is A cells. If there is a fibrous metaplasia of the A cells or anterior epithelial cell, it is called anterior capsular cataract or anterior polar cataract. Or there is a posterior, subposterior one is posterior, subcapsular one ki, if the opacity occurs just in front of the posterior capsule, in front of the posterior capsule, it is called posterior subcapsular cataract. And it is due to the migration and proliferation of equatorial lens epithelial cells along with the posterior capsules. And most of the time, these capsular cataract usually in the centrally, located centrally. That's why the capsular cataract usually corresponds to the visual axis and causing marked visual impairment in daylight and near vision. Daylight and near vision কি হয়? The pupil become constricted. যখন pupil constricted হয়ে যায়, তখন কি হয়? The central ray will be obstructed by this central opacity and peripheral ray will get obstruction by the iris. ফলে দেখা যায় কি তারা আর দেখতে পান, কিন্তু ব্রাইট লাইটে হয় কি, here you can see the pupil is dilated. The bright light, in the dim light, the pupil will be dilated. In that, যদি dim light হয় তখন তারা ভালো দেখে, কেমনে দেখে? Central ray obstruction হলো এই opacity দিয়ে, কিন্তু পেরিফেরিতে দেখো is a bit clear. So এখানে তো লাইট, এই পেরিফেরি দিয়ে কিছু লাইট ঢুকবে, তো পেরিফেরি দিয়ে যখন লাইট দেখে তখন সে কিছু দেখতে পায়। সেজন্য ওই রোগীরা এসে বলবে ডাক্তার সাহেব যখন অন্ধকারে যায় তখন ভালো দেখে। কেন ভালো দেখে? Because in the dim light the pupil is dilated, so the central rays get obstructed, but peripheral ray, there is no opacity in the peripheral part, so the peripheral ray of light will not get obstruction. So some ray of light, কিছু লাইট ভিতরে যেতে পারে, কিছু লাইট ভিতরে যেতে পারে বলে তারা অন্ধকারে ভালো দেখে। কিন্তু যখন দিনের বেলা হয় কি, যখন পিপল কনস্ট্রিক্ট করে যায় তখন দিস পার্ট উইল বি কভার্ড বাই দ্য আইরিস। So iris is a not transparent, মানে it is not a transparent structure. Iris ভিতরে লাইট যেতে পারে না, our central ray get obstruction by the cataract, এটার ভিতরে আবার লাইট যেতে পারে না, তাহলে most of the light will get obstruction. Peripheral ray, central ray, both are cut up. So that's why there is more visual impairment in the daylight. And so next come to the stage of the age-related cataract. In the stage of the age-related cataract, that is called maturity. The cataract, if it is remain untreated, gradually it becomes more and more hard. There will be some changes. So stage 1 is the immature cataract. Immature means we consider this stage of the cataract, though it is not a, it is one is visual acuity is reduced to counting finger and lens color is grayish white. We can assess this. You see the lens color is grayish white in color, and you can see visual acuity is reduced to counting finger. Then it is called immature cataract. In the mature stage, you see visual acuity is reduced to the hand movement, but the lens color is white. You can see this lens color is grayish, ekdom white hoye geche. All cortical lens fibers are white. Then intumescent stage. Intumescent stage, there is a swelling of the lens due to hydration of the lens. So can hydration hoy? Due to changes in the ionic compositions. So the anterior posterior diameter of the lens will be increased and there is the interlenticular pressure will be increased. So by looking at the morphology, এখানে দেখো যে অনেকগুলো বেকুলস তৈরি হয়েছে এখানে। So by looking at the morphology, you can see this is a intumescent cataract and the lens color is white cataract, white and visual acuity reduced to hand movements. So next on in hypermature stage, the all the capsule will be wrinkle কেন হয়ে যায় যখন আরো with the remain untreated the cortex gradually become liquefied যখন liquefied হয়ে যায় one is lens is liquefied and lens capsule become leaky lens capsule যখন leaky হয়ে যায় some cortex will come out ফলে হয় কি the volume the tense of the lens will be decreased সেজন্য the shrunken and wrinkle capsule due to the leakage of water out of the lens through the leaky capsules and visual acuity is reduced to perception of the light and lens color is milky white. So color and visual acuity by this. And this is very interesting Morganian category, stage 5 in the last stage. Total liquefaction of the cortex. Normally আমরা কি দেখছি normally আমরা দেখছি the lens remain the nucleus in the central position. In front of the nucleus there is the anterior cortex. Behind the lens there is a আমি তাহলে আবার এখানে চলে যাই. You can see over here this lens you see this nucleus is brown color. In front there is the anterior cortex, behind posterior cortex, above equatorial cortex, below there is a equatorial cortex. When this cortex these cortical fibers liquefied যখন একদম liquefied হয়ে যাবে তখন কি হবে তখন due to the weight of this nucleus এই নিউক্লিয়াসের ওয়েটের কারণে সেটা ইট উইল সিঙ্ক ডাউন এটা নিচের দিকে চলে আসে কিন্তু এই কর্টেক্সটা যদি লিকুইফাইড না হয় তাহলে দিস নিউক্লিয়াস ক্যানট সিঙ্ক ডাউন ওটা নিচে আসতে পারে না বিকজ দে উইল বি সাপোর্টেড বাই দিস ইনফিরিয়র কর্টিক্যাল ফাইবার্স বাট হোয়েন দিস কর্টিক্যাল ফাইবার্স বিকাম লিকুইফাইড উইথ দ্য এজিং প্রসেস দ্য নিউক্লিয়াস উইল বি সিঙ্ক ডাউন হ্যাঁ এটাই এখানে দেখা যাচ্ছে ইউ ক্যান সি ওভার হিয়ার ভেরি ক্লিয়ারলি very interesting you can see these totally liquefied and this is the nucleus brown color it is shrink down when these things happen we say this is the Morganian stage so today I would like to finish over here and next I will take serial of classes on the cataract and let's see so if you have any questions let me know otherwise I say good night. Mr. Omar Farooq.
জি স্যার
should I finished
শেষ করতে পারেন স্যার
okay thank you so much good night
জি থ্যাংক ইউ